Hey everyone, welcome to TG Garage Talks podcast. My name's Chachi Averett. I'm the host alongside Matt Vaught and the Godfather himself, Cory Smith. We are helping young men navigate the wilderness of their lives and their faith. Thanks for joining us. Let's get to it. Welcome to TG Garage Talks podcast. I'm Chachi Averett. I'm your host. I am here with the Godfather himself, Cory Smith.
Nice.
And another staff guy with me, Matt Vaught. Matt just joined us in January. He is based out of the Virginia area, but is jumping on in a bunch of different roles. And he has just been spending time with dudes, kind of getting his feet under. He's coming out of being on staff at a church. And so, Matt, welcome. Give us a little backstory. Tell us what you've been up to, man.
What up, what up? Hey guys, nice to see you. Yeah, super stoked to be on staff at Training Ground. It's been a long time coming. So I've been on staff now a month and 1 day.
32 days.
Yeah, out of college, I went on staff with an organization called Young Life. Was on staff there for 10 years. Then went on to become a pastor of spiritual formation at a church in Winchester, Virginia for a few years before moving to Lexington, Virginia, where we live now. Was blessed to get to help plant a church called Rockers Church here 10 years ago. And I've been running with them and kind of reached the point where it was time to move on. They needed some new leadership, kind of did what I was supposed to do there. And that's how I ended up here with Training Ground. So we started a conversation about 3 months ago, and it's been really cool to see how the Lord's led us and brought us to this point. I have 2 daughters, my wife, Megan, and I. My oldest daughter is Ella. She's a senior in college. And then my youngest is Sophie, is a second year, also in college. So we are officially empty nesters.
Nice.
This whole new season.
Heck yeah, dude. What again, quick snippet of what drew you to TG. It wasn't like a, I hate church ministry because we love the church. We love, we all have dabbled in that, but like what drew you to it? And yeah.
As I looked around, where my heart continued to go over the past few years is really connecting the younger men in our church. And we live in a college town, so we have a ton of young men and women in that age range, 18, 25 in there, and really wanting to connect them with the older generation and figure out how to do life together. And that's a lot of what Training Ground does and has been doing for the past 2 decades, right? So that's a big piece of what really has drawn me to the Training Ground. I say I get what they're trying to do, what we're doing. I think it's huge. I think there's a season which, like, the world right now is asking these questions about young men, especially in America, where they're going, their failure to launch, all these. We're hearing all these terms being thrown around right now, not just in Christian culture, but also in just society. So I think the voice that Training Ground has in this space is really needed. I think it's for a time such as this. So that's why I want to be. That's why I'm here. Yeah, absolutely.
Heck yeah. And you guys all need to know Matt jumped in and has already hosted the first event of the year for the organization. He spent time with dudes. Matt, tell us about your first event and some follow-up and stuff like that. And then we'll
so we kind of fell into that one. We're going on a Outer Banks surf fishing trip in February with a bunch of guys from around Virginia, and some of the guys that I've invited on that trip went to Virginia Tech, and I just knew they didn't know me there. I knew a couple guys there, but why would they sign up for a random 50-year-old dude that they've never met before? So I reached out to one of my buddies down there and said, "Hey, can I come down and hang out? I'll grill some meat. We'll just spend some time. I'll get to talk a little bit about Training Ground, but really, I mean, so much of ministry is just being relational, learning names, right?" So I was like, "Let me come down and we'll just hang out a little bit." He's like, "That's awesome." I was like, "What if I bring some wild game?" He's like, "Even better." I was like, "What do you want?" And he's like, "What do you got?" I was like, "Well, we got squirrel, rabbit, bear." He's like, "Bring the bear." Right? He's like, "This is sick." So I was like, "Perfect." And I was thinking we were going to get there and have his house, 10 guys, we'll grill, hang out. And 5 days before I go down, I reach out to him. I'm like, "Hey, some details. What are we talking about? We need to nail this down. How many guys do you think are going to show up?" And he was like, "Probably like 40." And I was like, 40? Okay, here we go. So, man, I literally just emptied my freezer and brought down like 50 pounds of wild game, and 50 guys ended up showing up at Virginia Tech, and we got to hang out. We served them just like the first course of small game, and then did a little talked about Jesus and training ground a little bit, and then brought out the heavy hitters, and we did um, tenderloin wrapped in bacon, bear, wild turkey nuggets, the whole thing. And at one point, I just dumped a whole bag of raw meat on a table and gave them sticks. And they're like, they're putting these, the venison little cubes on their stick, and they're roasting them over the fire, and they're treating it like marshmallows. They're like cooking it for like 35 seconds, and they're like, it's probably good, So it was great. Really fun time. Just that's kind of the heartbeat of why we do ministry, is they get to hang out with guys and learn their story and have conversations. And that was a great kickoff to what we want to be doing here in Virginia. So yeah, and heading to Outer Banks here in a few weeks. Prayed for good weather and fish, but really, um, some great conversations. So yeah, we're excited. Got a full house coming up. So here we go.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it's been cool to see the quick momentum happen in Virginia.
Hmm.
Because like when we started Tennessee, I mean, it was just a different season. We were coming out of COVID and it was slower, and we're like, man, it can't be this hard to start an area. And we were right. Either we were doing something wrong, or I'm gonna blame COVID, not me and Corey and everybody. Like, and Matt, you're a stud, dude. So we're excited to have your energy and your voice. Honestly, more than anything, your presence with dudes.
Dude,
It kind of gives us the pivot, a little bit. We want to talk a little bit about experiential discipleship and what that looks like and how that's meant. And I think that's the cool thing about what you were doing with those dudes. Like, it's not a come let me lead a Bible study. Nothing wrong with that. We love Bible. We love the studies of it, like all that stuff. We love scripture. But you invited dudes into an experience. And I think that's
mhm,
been such a core piece of what we do with TG for 20 years. But honestly, if you were to look at all of our lives, and Scotty, who's also on staff, and a lot of our volunteers and our committees, experience has been the thing that has been the biggest part of our walk with the Lord in our personal lives. I'm 40, Matt, you're 45-ish, Corey, you're 50-ish. Like we got decades of experiencing life with Jesus, and we know that that is the key to understanding, who he is, how he is, all that stuff. And so, Corey,
mhm.
man, I would love to hand it over to you, man. Like, what
Yeah.
when it comes to training ground and experiential discipleship, kinda give us the background on what that's looked like over the years, how has it
Mhm.
changed, where we headed with it, that kinda stuff.
hmm Yeah, thanks, guys. It's fun to be on this with you guys. Even we're just kind of starting out our spring series, um, and again, this idea of experience. I can remember we were invited to come to this thing in Nashville in the fall of 2008. We had just started, and, it was this kind of like it was called Youth Architects. It's basically like a ton of youth pastors getting together at a trade show, trying to find missions trips or just, different experiences for their high school friends, and, kind of bunch of them were obviously, from all different churches on the East Coast, and we had a booth, and that's a whole 'nother story, but we one of the taglines we actually had, one of the signs we had was, this thing called experiential discipleship, um, and we literally had people ask us like, "What is that?" And, just because, and we didn't even think at that point, for us, it didn't feel like it was like a definition that needed some clarification, but it evidently did. Um, and so when we started Training Ground in '06, a lot of the conversations before that were that we knew that it needed to be experiential in nature, meaning, there are times that guys in the program kind of sit around and take notes, and, there's this dialogue or conversation, and it's this subject matter that gets passed from one person to another. But we also that the training ground program needed to be an experience. Like, we needed to take guys into the wilderness to not just talk about wilderness, or we needed them to have a significant work experience because, uh, it wasn't something that we could just sit down and kinda have them read a book on work, and then they would understand what work ethic is and how that is for a man and how that translates to, like, lifelong wisdom. And so we knew at the core, like, experience needed to be, really, really a pillar of the training ground program. And, I think probably part of it too is, and a lot has changed in the last 20 years. And obviously I'll talk about COVID in a little bit, but the idea for us was we wanted guys to feel success and failure, and it feeling really, really important that would happen in kind of a community context where, like, we wanted, I can remember even starting, like, we were talking about work, and I'm not saying that, it's important to have mentoring and work, but we really kind of did want not, we wanted a challenging work experience, meaning, like, we've had guys get fired or get close to being fired or have bosses that are not believers, and we wanted that tension. We wanted that experience where guys could feel like they could win, or maybe they lost or they got fired and they had to wrestle with that. Even just in experiences of, like, in brotherhood and living in the same house together, like, how do I behave, in relationship? How do I handle conflict? Like, a lot of those things can be, imparted through kind of this, like, teaching model, but, like, they really, really stick when they get it, you experience it, I think about Chachi, I think about our class this last summer about guys running hills, where, you know, we had some conflict in the house, and, one guy was kinda, he wasn't, let's just say he wasn't performing at like, his best ability to be a part of the community, and, we had guys run some hills, and there is something about that, even, you know, for me, just turning 51, that still relates to that age group that we're working with, the 18 to 25, that it feels like so much can be learned through experience. And, there's just something about that developmentally, for a boy or a young man or a man, that feels like to actually have gone through something, feels like that the life lesson spiritually, emotionally, really, really does just kind of take hold in our own lives and in our future decision making. So,
And even in
Huh.
that, Corey, like, the you're talking about the guys who are, like, walking into work or having conflict in their house and have, like, to have another person see those teachable moments and go,
mhm,
like, "Hey, let's talk about this." Because 'cause I'm gonna be honest, like, we're so dang oblivious to our own lives and our own selves. So, to have a Chachi or a Corey go, like, "Hey, this conflict, like, what if we here's some ways we might do this well. Let's
mhm,
practice this right now." Like, that I feel like is huge in young
mhm,
guys' lives. It's huge in my own life.
mhm,
Yeah, it was really rich this summer sitting on the porch with guys and they would respond to a direct thing. Say me and Matt are in conflict. Matt would say, "Hey, Chachi, you made me angry when you did this, da 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 da." And my knee jerk is, "Well, you know," and I was like, "No, no, no. No, 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 just stop. First of all, Matt, let's say, hey, when you did this, it made me feel like just even basics of I feel statements. And getting the guys to say, I don't care if you agree with what Matt said. Chachi, you need to say, hey man, I'm sorry I made you feel that way. Before you tell intentions, before you say any like just giving them the skills and the ability to say, all right, man, like that obviously wasn't where I was trying to go, but at the same time, how my words impacted you, it it is my responsibility on some level. And so I need to own my words and my impact, even
mhm,
if that wasn't my intention. And Mary Ellen, who is um just a sage of wisdom for us and program and for a lot of people, but she's a therapist and just this powerhouse of a voice when it comes to kindness, but also not losing your backbone.
Mhm.
Said that just the owning the impact of your words doesn't change the the intention or your heart. It just says, "Hey, I said something. I need to own that this may hit you differently." Anyway, but like the experiential piece of that is walking with dudes and saying, "Hey, I this may not be your heart. I know this dude's heart. Like, I knew that like that was not what he meant, but I also heard how he said it." You know, so like being able to have the outside objective, but also it's really not fully objective, subjective view of walking through and saying, "Man, this is how you're being perceived. That's not how you want to be perceived. So let me help you grow in maturity to be able to have the voice that you want to have so that you can have the impact you have." And just that's experiential. I mean, literally look at how Jesus walked with the disciples in that.
And and I would say, like, after 15 years of doing ministry with old people, like, I will say, like, the vast majority of
Yeah.
Christians never mature past being 18 years old in high school. Like, they're
Yep.
still dealing with those same things the same way that they did as a junior in high school as they do now as they're at 35 or 40 or 60 or whatever. They are never allowed to, like, really grow into being able to have those conversations and deal with conflict or whatever it is in really healthy ways it calls us to do. That's huge.
So, and you got to be shown. You got to be.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what and that
Go ahead.
no, I'm just saying, like, that's the you guys are bringing up a good point, is, I can remember one of our volunteers a long, long time ago saying, "Experience is good, but evaluated experience is better."
Mhm,
And what we meant by that was great example is like, if let's just say a young man in the training ground experience has a failure, that he's not left to his own assumptions about himself and his own assumptions about God, but that we actually like, what does evaluated experience look like in community where we are living with brothers, right? What Chachi is what you're talking about in terms of like, hey, when you said that, this is how it came off. And then there are mothers and fathers, trusted mothers and fathers, spiritual mothers and fathers that offer that evaluation of that experience. We're saying like, that can change the trajectory, like, incredibly in a young man's life, where he can walk away from an experience thinking it was a failure, but he can have it reframed by a guide or a mentor that says, "Wait a minute, wait a minute. Let's really take a look at this and say, hey, that was a great swing. Like,
mhm,
don't be discouraged. Get back up to the plate and swing again." Because I think, at because we are shallow on experience when we are 18 to 25, and so, I mean, it just feels like that so much that intergenerational part of having others be able to say, "Hey, that was actually a win, not a loss."
mhm,
And because I think we all probably have stories of places that we've been left on our own to kind of figure out, well, hey, did you know, how did I blow it there, or was that a good swing? And I just think like that's been such a huge piece, and we knew that kind of going in, in 2006 with starting TG, that we needed that intergenerational piece, but we also need that, and it needed to be residential, meaning like we needed brothers as well. Like we needed it to feel a little gritty, in the sense of like how are we interpreting what we're going through, and like how do we use that as kind of like a framework to kind of make future decisions. So you guys are bringing. I mean, it's great to think about the value of experience, in the context of community.
and this is not something that
Yeah.
training ground came up
No,
with. Like,
no.
this is exactly what
Yeah.
Jesus did over and over and over and
Yep.
invited this man is power of invitation, inviting those 12 disciples along with it to say, "Hey, walk with me.
Yep.
Hey, let's go. Let's take a
Yep.
walk."
I mean, and then Matt, that's a great intro into that Luke 10 passage
Mhm,
about Jesus sending out the disciples. And like I love even, he gives them instruction. He's been walking with them for a little bit. And then he's saying, okay, now it's your turn. And there is this place in that Luke chapter in verse 18 where he said, the 72 came back and they were really excited. And even Jesus is kind of cheering them on, saying, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. And like, I love that part where he is imparting a faith that is, like, visceral, like, it's not just, "I'm gonna tell you how to believe." It's like, "I'm gonna actually make you a character in the story of kind of healing the sick and casting out demons." That there is this place that says that feels very TG, like, that feels very much like, "Okay, we're gonna kinda do some teaching at night, but then we're gonna send you out in the real world in the morning and wash and repeat that, over, 4 weeks or 8 weeks. And uh, I think, those type of experiences just become just the bedrock for guys, for decades to come. Is this place of not just, "Hey, we're gonna give you information and then you're gonna take a test, and then, we're gonna do that for a long time." It's more of like, "Hey, we're gonna give you some info on, like, how to deal with this relationally or how to deal with this spiritually, and then we're gonna go send you out just like Jesus did." And so, I mean, I think I love that part of it. Like, I love that it feels that kind of tangible in terms of an experience.
And I see you guys do this over and over. I've gotten to hang out a lot and go on some trips with Training Ground in the past, and I kind of been around the orbit of TG for a long time. And like you see all right, so all these guys roll back in and they are fired up, right? Like
Mhm,
they did something crazy. They didn't take a bag. They didn't have their iPhone with them. They just went out there. They roll, and Jesus celebrates with them. He's like,
mhm,
"Yes, you did. That's amazing." And then he also redirects and he's like,
mhm,
Yep.
"Also, also, don't forget, that's not what we're actually that's not our reason to rejoice." He's like, "And remember this eternal perspective, right? Like
mhm,
there's a new way of living now. You rejoice that your name's written in the Lamb's book of life. Like there is an eternity that we celebrate." And yeah, it's exactly what I see happening in guys'
Yeah.
lives.
mhm,
We get to walk along with them
mhm,
over and over.
Yeah. It is calling them back to their identity because that's
Absolutely.
what Jesus is doing. Jesus
Yeah.
is like, awesome. That's a product of
Yeah.
who you are.
Yeah.
It's not your power, it is what empowers you. It is that
mhm,
you have Jesus inside of you. It is that I was with you. I also love this part that like is so um like the guys come back to like Jesus, you're never gonna believe this. Like he didn't know. And then
Right.
like it's like this part of me, I'm like, God, I'm so freaking human sometimes. I know I'm eternal. I know that this is like the whole thing, but at the same time, like I'm so human because I do that all the time too. I'm like, God, you're never gonna believe how you came through. Like, wait,
No,
hold on.
he
But we
loves
do.
that.
Yeah,
Loves
yeah. But we
it.
get to invite dudes like most of especially post summer follow up with dudes is,
mhm,
hey man, remember who you are now.
mhm,
Awesome. It is so much of a callback to identity instead of this you could be, it's you are.
mhm,
It's this identity that Jesus is not saying like, "Hey, yeah, you could have done more even," right? Like he doesn't even go to like where they messed up or anything. He celebrates and then he calls them back to, "Yeah, but remember this isn't the goal. It's not just this. It's also that you would remember and rejoice in the fact that your name is written in heaven." That is so Jesus and so experiential, right? Like it's
mhm,
so much kindness in the fact that Jesus is guiding them. Again, they call him rabbi, which is like teacher, instructor, but he really is a guide. He is guiding them through this experience of walking intimately with the Lord.
mhm. Yeah, and um, to kinda bring that to 2026, or at least 2020, I think we went through as a cult, like, how does this fit in the cultural context? Like, I feel like that for us, it's always, I mean, I think the idea of like, Matt, you're right, we are teaching kind of some ancient things. Like, this isn't a new idea in terms of discipleship. I like to think that maybe TG was a part of kind of resurrecting parts of this.
Mhm.
But I think the idea with experience really kind of for me, like when we came with the COVID in 2020 and 21, there was this place that like as a culture, we thought that, well, we and just increase of digital access, iPhones, all the above, that we could learn everything what we needed to know about life through digital. And I can remember even interviewing a guy during that time for a summer program. He was like, "Yeah, I'm just graduating college, but I never went to college." And I was like, "Holy cow! Like, what the heck?" He was like, "Well, I graduated high school with a bunch of credits, so I was about a year and a half in, and then I just finished college remote because of COVID." And he really was sad about it. He was like, "Man, I never got the college experience."
Mm.
And I think during that time, part of the cultural idea of experience kind of got assaulted in the sense that, well,
Just YouTube
I
it.
don't need to go out and ask or risk to ask someone to help me, as simple as like, teach me how to change my oil, because that's risky, right? To go to an older man in my church and go, "Hey, I need my oil change. Could you teach me how to do it?" Because we risk rejection, but I mean, YouTube can teach anything. And I think we're actually looping back around, now in the spring of 2026, where I think the culture is saying, "Wait a minute, that that reliance on digital input is moving to an end," or at least it feels like it. Because it's like this idea that we reduce risk when we use the digital platforms, right? Instead of actually there's a humbling piece to say, "I don't have all the answers. I need to go ask others for those answers." And
You
what do you
used
think of
this
Matt?
term, Corey, earlier. You said evaluated experience.
Sure, sure.
Evaluated experience is what you don't get from YouTube. Like, what
Yeah,
would have those 72 gotten out of going out and then not having a
sure,
return to Jesus? It would have
sure,
been helpful, but nowhere near the impact, right?
sure.
That is the piece that you do not get without relationship.
But it is that risk. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
the crossroads, if you will. Is that you have to have a posture that says, "I don't know it all." And are we okay sitting in that tension? Because I think that place pushes us into experience or into risk, or at least a risky experience. How about that?
Today's episode of TG Garage Talks podcast is brought to you in part by Black's Barbecue. The original Black's Barbecue has been serving Central Texas and our nation since 1932. Ship barbecue nationwide at blacksbarbecue.com or visit in Central Texas.
Um,
Here's a great example of that. Just a little story. So on Saturday, I took this college guy duck hunting. He got into hunting in college, didn't grow up in a house where he knew how to hunt. So he's like leaning into this thing. It's brand new and it's super cold now. Everything's frozen. We got a lot of birds. So I invited him up. I like, hey, come. And for him, imagine being a 22-year-old, also dating my daughter,
mm,
right? Um, and then coming out with me on a first duck hunt. Well,
With guns.
with guns, like all of the things, right? He's learning how to duck call. He's learning all that stuff. But um the evaluated experience piece is what I'm coming to. So like he was missing uh a lot of ducks early, right? But for me to be able to sit beside him and go, "You're shooting high, you're shooting high, you're shooting high," right? And like, and it wasn't me just peppering him. He's like, "What am I doing wrong?" And I could be like, "I'm right here, and I can see where your sight is, and I know that you're shooting right over these things." And he was able to fix that right in the moment, right? It's that experiential piece of being guided. Like, yeah, that was risky for him to do that, but he was like, we walked away. He was like, "That was like the stuff you see on freaking YouTube channels, man. That was an incredible hunt," right? Like we had this experience, but it was me getting to sit beside him, which is exactly what somebody did for me 20 years ago, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and that's what I love about what we do with Range Day during our program, because it is such a tangible thing. We got these absolute studs that come out and talk through safety, but then on the day of range day, again, range day being where we introduce these guys to guns and like how to handle them well, how to shoot them, how to obviously be very safe and intentional with them. But you have like this year we had 9, I don't know. Fact check that for me, Turbo. You were there. Like, there's, he's in the
Yeah, yeah.
background. Um, but like 9 or so instructors, guides there that day, not including staff who we've been around guns, but not like these guys, like military, police, SWAT instructor, shooting instructor, guys. Um, there with the guys at each station. And so when they are shooting high, when they are shooting low, when they are walking around with a gun their finger too close to the trigger, or like pointing it in a direction the sun's, and we have very safe range days because there's so many eyes, obviously. But at the same
Mhm,
time, the evaluated experience of, man, you're going to shoot this rifle for the first time or this handgun for the first time, and you're pulling it just a little bit this way or that way, right? Like those little things with a YouTube video, you cannot ask it questions.
mhm.
So, y Corey, you talked about, like, what it takes for the younger or the less experienced person to be able to do that. It's risk. Like, they gotta be willing
Yeah,
to risk.
uh-huh.
What's it
Yep.
take for the older guy? Like, because I
Yeah,
could have been a total jerk, and we've been around those people before too, right? Like,
well, I like where you guys are going with this because it's kind of this other point I have is, and this is where we might be. I don't want to say like we've cornered the market on this, but we haven't. I just want to make sure that we're clear that when we, or at least my own personal conviction is, I love finding the older man or woman that is in the last pew in the church and is kind of hit cruise control in the second half of their life. And I want to ask what their life experience has been and how they want to bring that to young men. And that can
Say,
be
say more about last pew. What do you mean by last pew?
meaning like, I don't know, like my own spiritual walk is kind of quiet. They're not, I mean, they may do something in the church, serve in the church, but for the most part, they're kind of, and I'm not going to say they're lazy. I'm just going to say that their spiritual walk is pretty risk averse, meaning it's like, man, I'm going to come to church on Sunday. I might come on a Wednesday night, but like they're kind of like a quiet mouse in terms of their church presence. And
I would say they have a tendency to discount their own spiritual
yes,
journey, right?
yes,
They're
Yep.
self-selecting out because they don't think that they're qualified.
right, because
Yep.
they're thinking in their head
Right,
that their impact on others on in a spiritual context is like them saying, I can't lead a Bible study or lead worship
right,
because that's their context for spiritual development. I mean, I want a welder, I want a mechanic, I want an outdoorsman, I want a CPA, I want a financial guy, I want a mortgage broker, I want a doctor. Like I in those places, I want them to be as surprised about their own impact when they're with young guys as the young guy is impressed by their life experience. And so we're going back to that idea of like bringing value back to experience. Not that our culture has lost it, but they lost it for a little bit and they may be coming back to it. But for the most part, that idea of, I mean, and again, we as a culture, I believe, like we have a hard time valuing an older generation because we feel like they're not that they're washed up, but we feel like they don't have a lot to offer. And I feel like that for sure is an untapped resource. And I love that some of our mentors have been with us for 20 years, and some of them will say the most impactful thing I've ever done with my life is training ground. And like I'm proud of that. Like I'm proud of, like, regardless of the context. Like we have people fly fishing guides and we have like gun guides and like guys that have been with us for so long, but
Counselors and
yeah, but
teachers and
we're
accountants
asking
and
we're
yeah, yeah.
asking them to give of their own life experience, not something that's like outside that context. And so I mean, for me, like, I love that part of it. It almost kind of feels like the wild card, like that we weren't expecting. We can focus so much time on young men being transformed, but we haven't had that other conversation of like, what's the older generation? How are they being transformed from offering impact? Um,
Yeah.
and
Matt, what do you think it is that's caused them to believe that, dude? That older generation?
I think culture does that. I mean, there's so much that's glorified in terms of the younger, full of energy, like taking the field, the grind generation. And they're just louder. Like they just are loud. I mean, digital platforms obviously kind of feed into that paradigm, but because it's not like you don't see a lot of guys in their 50s and 60s like running social, like, but again, in a culture, again, I I think the overarching part of it is what if we're gonna value an older generation, what's the risk? And I think the risk is us saying, "I don't know all the answers to this life," and being okay with it, and being like, "That's actually a part of our spiritual and emotional development," is going, "I don't have it all together, and that's okay." Like, that's okay for my season of life, and, like, having that, thinking about having that heart posture that, we talked about in December at the retreat was this idea that our responsibility on the side of our spiritual development is the posture that our heart takes, and that is saying, I'm always a student. I don't know all the answers, and, so I think that's part of kind of why the older generation doesn't get the value that it deserves.
I think as you start to walk forward in this and you practice it and you do it over and over and over again, what's cool and unique about it is it begins to build a framework of life around Christ and community in a way that many people don't value. Like this is something that becomes very natural to you the more you like I got a brakes guy, I got an electric guy, I got a plumbing guy. Right. I've got a sausage guy, right? I whenever there's a and I'm that guy for other people too. Like it becomes a way that's like the first step that I go to is not YouTube. It's I'm calling Dano. Cause you know what? We're gonna have fun and he knows how to do this way better than I like it there's a community piece to it that begins to really be life giving and fun. This is not rocket science. It's just an invitation into somebody being in your life.
Yeah. What I love is this, it actually brings us to scripture. If we're really honest, if we look at Jesus's experience with the disciples, he was the older man, right?
Mhm.
Inviting them into this next thing, helping them evaluate their experience and pointing them to an older person in God as Father, right? And we get these really sweet relational pieces where like I'm, looking at our summer program and the list of teachers that's on my wall right there. It's the older men that helped me are now the grandfathers in this situation in a lot of ways. I'm bringing them younger men that need their expertise and helping them remember, hey, like you still have a voice. I think of the Brian Weatherills and the Guy Deloaches and the Phil Higgins and the list goes on, right? These men that have offered a part of them and a part of their expertise and have seen how that we're not just letting dudes who have a skill set and are absent in their relationship with God, right? We're inviting men who have both as much as we can, right? And so all of these guys not only have a depth of skill set, but they also have a depth of relationship with the Lord that we're inviting them to offer through their skills. I think about last summer, Gary Gray and the welding day. When I got there, I had met Gary 2 or 3 times and we had talked, we had shared about the idea, and then he starts teaching about welding and wielding tools well. And I was like, oh, I no longer need to supervise this day because I'm going to screw this up if I open my mouth. All right, fellas, y'all got this. I'll be back this
Mhm.
afternoon to pick y'all up, because there really is this place where you can entrust the right men and women to lead these guys. And so we are literally getting to play this role of Jesus of being like, hey, we're going to call you back to identity. And then we're going to release you to go figure that thing. And I love that piece of what we get to do because it takes the pressure off of us. And I think it takes the pressure off of mentors too, because mentors don't have to be perfect. They just get to be honest. Most of my guys that I bring in and my women that I bring in around the guys who are doing program will be able to tell you all about the success. But if they're really comfortable in their skin, they're going to tell you what they learned from their own experiential screw ups. And that will like offer this guiding piece that we see in scripture as well, where Jesus is like, hey, like, and then obviously he didn't sin, so he's not telling you, but he brings in this like, hey, next time you could do this differently. And there's this incredible kindness that we get to invite guys into that makes discipleship less sterile and less shameful. And I think as long as you stay away from sterility and shame, man, discipleship is really easy. So
It's not
That's
complicated.
it, that's
It may
it.
not
Chachi,
be easy, but
I love
it does not have to be complicated.
I'm gonna
how
call
about
yeah,
this?
that's good. I like
It's
I
simple. How
love
about it's
Chachi.
simple?
Chachi,
Right,
oh,
right.
come on, it's so easy. Come
It's
on.
so easy.
Well,
I
it's easy
do.
for me in this season because I'm just telling them what they have to do. They don't have to listen.
I,
I mean, like, I'm not the one playing it out.
I think
Uh,
one of the things you're hitting on there is like when we learn to follow a guy in what was he teaching? Oh, welding. When we learn to follow this guy in how to do a clean weld and put two pieces of metal together all day, we build trust, we build camaraderie, we work shoulder to shoulder with him, and then at the end of the day, we learn to follow him to the foot of the cross, right? Like that. There's no.
Yeah.
That's not. The idea is not to learn how to weld. The idea is this is a avenue of experiential discipleship that then going to carry us towards Jesus, right? Like that's
mhm.
Mhm.
absolutely what we get to do, and what these guys want to do. They just haven't been able to get the context to do it, right? And take
Yeah.
that one thing, and you ever talk about something with somebody, and you hit like 7 different things, and all of a sudden you're like, "Hey, so you're a welder? What'd you?" And there's like their whole world lights up and they just come to life, right? And when we can connect those things, geez, that's where Jesus shows up, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's what I love about the term experiential discipleship. Like experiential learning comes out of the therapeutic field,
Mhm.
and it's learning by doing. It's literally team building, like that's where it comes from. And so that's what discipleship in my life has looked like when it has been most effective. It is, yes, time at church on Sunday, time in small groups, time in scripture study, but walking with people who have this similar goal in mind, whether they be older or younger, and allowing life to overlap to a place where we can learn from each other is that's it. I was literally on a text feed with guys from our small group, and I won't say names, but one of them was bringing up how they were frustrated with something at a church experience, and he thrown it out in the text feed as like this, like, man, I can't believe this, da da da, like we've all done in the group of dudes, and I didn't bite on it 2 days ago. I instead said, hey man, I think you might want to pray about that a little bit because it sounds like you're really bitter. And obviously, if you've ever been on a bro text, that guy sucks. The guy who, like, brings it to reality, but I just felt this prompt of the Lord being like, "Hey, remember when you were leaving church staff and it wasn't this greatest experience or and you really struggled with leadership dynamics? Here's an opportunity, and here's maybe even the reason I let you experience that is so that you could walk with a dude in this way."
Mhm.
And so this ability to say, "Here's my story. Man, I'll be praying for you with that because it sounds like there's some bitterness there. Can you also be praying for me because I am still at times I hear about this leadership dynamic. I'm like, why the crap are they doing it that way when they know it's not gonna anyway. And so we get to invite these young men because if I had had that skill set at 18 to 25, my leaving church staff or leaving whatever hard situations and dealing with bitterness would have looked very differently. I just was untrained and unfathered in it. And so we get to take our life sets and be like, all right, God, you have let me walk through some stuff. And some of that has been because you wanted me to learn something. And a lot of that is because I'm stubborn and we learned the hard way. But nonetheless, there's these stories and these places that I am trained now that I can offer that training. And that's what we get to do as staff. That's what we get to do as leaders. And it's what I did for years as a volunteer with TG and a part-time staff and a hybrid staff and then a full-time, I don't know, whatever, like lots of hats, right? But like I think the idea is that we get to invite guys into a bigger story that draws them to the Lord and says, hey, you can do this a different way. And it doesn't say that you're less of a man. It actually shows that you're growing up and maturing, and that's the glory of what we get to do. And I think what Training Ground offers. And so, Cory, as we kind of put like a bow on this idea, what is your hope for the legacy of Training Ground when it comes to experiential discipleship?
Today's episode is brought to you in part by Spotted Dog Outfitters. Spotted Dog Outfitters is Southeast Tennessee's premier fly fishing and outfitting company. Whether it's local streams or hosted trips all over the United States and international, Spotted Dog Outfitters has you covered when it comes to fly fishing trips and instruction. Give them a call at 423-715-9623 to get on the water today.
I think there are a couple things. One, that whether it's us as staff or volunteers or alumni or participants, that we come away with a perspective to say, uh, kind of three things. One, that we don't know it all, that we don't have all the answers. Two, it is how are we inviting Jesus into those places on a daily basis? The places that feel awkward and uncomfortable, places that we could fail or risk. And thirdly is what are the resources God has given us in the older generation around us, whether that's through our neighborhood, our church, our community, like, and then how are we inviting them into that process with us? Meaning, like, how are we asking the harder questions about our lives earlier in our life and allowing them to offer their evaluation and their feedback and their wisdom into our worlds. And so taking that framework and living in it when you're young, you're in the middle of your life or at the end of your life, that like that would be like a perspective or just a framework for us to kind of live out how we grow emotionally and spiritually. Yeah. Yeah. So that would be kind of how I'd want that legacy to be continued.
Yeah. Matt, what about you, man? What are your kind of final thoughts on this? And just like say a little bit more. I know you're really excited to be on, so like I can see like you're holding in your joy even now as you
No,
it's
it's
like
so great. I
boils.
just
Yeah,
love,
yeah.
it turns out, shocker, this is exactly how young men learn.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is how we're wired. The world's
Mm-hmm.
figuring this out now, but this is how we make sense of the world, and we're just allowing it to happen. So I love that. For me, the big takeaway for me in all of this continues to be the power of invitation. It,
Mhm.
going on that duck hunt required me texting a dude and saying, "Hey, come with me," right? And him saying, "Yeah, that's risky, but yes."
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
invitation, risk, Jesus.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's good. Well, fellas, thank y'all so much for joining today. Awesome conversation as always. Couple quick notes. We are recruiting. So if you're hearing this podcast and you're like, man, this sounds incredible. I know a young man that needs this, or I am a young man that needs this, which is every young man that listens to this. Um, Man, we've got spots open for our summer programs. We've got a 4-week program in Colorado from June 26th through July 26th. And then we've got a 8-week program in Tennessee from May 30th through July 29th. Um, Man, we really would love for you to be praying about that. We've got some interns lined up, we've got program lined up. We're just missing you. And so if you know a guy that needs this experience, I would ask you to start praying about it, but then also praying about helping him get there. It is one thing to invite a dude, it is another way to invite a dude and help him accomplish what you've invited him into. And so, if you're an alumni, if you're a follower, if you're a pastor, preacher, teacher, whatever you are, help us find the dudes. We need about 24 dudes, and we're probably a third of the way there from committed guys. And so we've got capacity. Please connect us. Reach out to Cory at Training Ground, Matt at Training Ground, or Chachi at trainingground.com. Any of those. You can find us on our website, trainingground.com, and even find more information. Please do not hesitate to reach out. Anyway, we're trying something new. Give us feedback, comments, and everything on our videos. This is our first video podcast, getting big time. So thank you so much for joining the Training Ground podcast. You guys are awesome. listen in every 2 weeks as we release our heart, our thoughts, and just our voice in this space for young men.